Okay, so, Ralph, do you have a slide? So I'm gonna start this with cash, because I think cash is important.
Yes.
So, we have over $5 million worth of cash in the bank. And I literally mean in bank. So we've got about a little bit more than $1 million in our reserve account, and we have over $4 million just cash. So when we talk about the building and stuff, that's sort of the cash we're talking about trying to spend. I wanted to bring this up because I know I will talk a lot about restricted liability accounts and sort of things like that. Cash is important. We have cash. Boards, both past boards and the current boards, have been very good about spending only when it's appropriate and only when we have money. I don't want to say we have $5 million, let's go to town. The real trick for the board is to be responsible with that amount of money. But I do want to let you all know we are financially secure, and this is sort of the proof, proof of that. All of the money we have is earning between 3.5% and 5%. And that's largely due to the work of Diane Stanley and the Finance Committee. So the next slide will show where we are in relation to our budget. So on the year-to-date side, so we're about 78 grand to the good so far. And while that's good, we have a lot of accounts that just hit us at different times. So storm damage does not come in at an equal amount each month. Gas for the pool sort of fluctuates high and low. We have a tree invoice that is not reflected in there. But still, with all of that, we're still under budget. We're still not spending as much as we bring in, which is a very good thing. So, just a quick highlight on that. I did put up there a few accounts that we are doing well and not so well on, but the well far outlast the not so well. At the April 5th board meeting, the board accepted the road study from Central Testing. And what this road study is the next 15 years of spending for our roads. I had taken those numbers, plugged them into our reserve study, and tried to do a quick analysis of that. I then brought that analysis to the Finance Committee, and they agreed with what I had found out, which is if we throw 2023 net income, which was about $187,000, into our reserves, that stabilizes our reserves for the updated road study, which to me was great because I had no idea what was going on with the roads and the costs. So that to me sort of said, if we move that money into our reserves now, over the next 30 years, we shouldn't go below a $200,000 balance in our reserve account, which is what our financial policies say. So I was excited about that. God knows what's going to happen with petroleum costs over the next 10 years, but based on our best knowledge now, we think that we're in good shape. So with that, I'd like to make a motion that we move our 2023 net income amount into our reserve fund.
I'll second the motion. Any questions, discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Great.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Todd. Appreciate it. Managers report.
Okay, so March we were busy getting a bunch of bids for the trails and some material for the trails, and Legacy Trail, which is number 12, that one has been refinished. We've had some the roots ground on the loop by the river in the River Park. We're going to be resurfacing that section. We're going to be resurfacing Otter Pond Trail, and we're going to be resurfacing Scrub J up to where they both go into the conservation areas. And you'll see that work going on over the next couple weeks. Also, we got a proposal for Nature View Pond. There was a erosion area where water runoff from houses would go into the pond, and it's been slowly eroding and it's gotten pretty bad. So Lake Pros gave us a proposal. We went ahead and signed that because it was reasonable, and they'll be out to work on that in the next, hopefully, couple weeks. And I'm sure everybody's seen the tree maintenance that's going on. DWC Outdoors did a great job lifting the elevations on all the trees along Mirandine Boulevard and around the social hall. They also had a few trees that they had to remove because of mistletoe infestation, and then a lot of trees they were able to just take the sections of the tree that were infected and remove that. So hopefully those trees will remain healthy. And then a part of the tree removal, and you guys discussed this at a previous meeting, you had us get proposals for some trees for the areas that were removed or fallen and lost along the boulevard. And then they also removed 2 trees in 2 circles where we have landscape beds. So I have a proposal for that, and we'll be replacing those trees. So you'll see that coming. And then the dock, I have been going back and forth with the dock company. We should be getting a contract back from them, and I will send that to the attorney, make sure he's okay with it, and then we should be able to get them contracted and then move forward with building the dock here soon. Probably won't, they're gonna go through, once we get the contract done, they have to do engineering plans and then go through a permitting process, so I don't expect construction to happen right away, but hopefully by the end of summer they'll be starting that. And then coming up, we've got palm tree trimming. That should be starting in the next couple weeks. And then just update the shuffleboard courts. They have 90, has a pretty big backlog of places that they have to work on. So it'll probably be late summer before they're out here to work on it. Late summer. Once I get an exact date, I'll share that with the community and make sure that the people that use the courts won't be affected.
Okay, great.
I think Frank's got a question, Terry.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Frank.
Josh, how did the dock people respond to that one revision that we requested them to quote with those steps going down into the water?
So that's what I was going back and forth on.
Okay.
It raised the cost of the project by $1,800.
That's
Okay.
not bad.
Well
So,
worth it. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? No? Thanks, Josh. So President's report, first of all, I know myself and I'm sure the rest of the board want to thank the CAM for seeing through the work that was done along Meandering Trail and elsewhere with DWC. I think they also did a great job for us, as they always do. Trees definitely look much better, healthier. And as you all can see, we will be addressing today and hopefully moving forward on the much needed road work we'll be discussing here shortly. Also, after our last review of the power plans, they now have them back with all of our notations and are working on the completed set. IDDC is working on items such as the flooring, color scheme, appurtenances, and much more, which is needed for the last phase and before final review by the board. So we're hoping that we get all that moving here quickly, maybe, optimistically, and that we'll get it back so we can move on and get the project hopefully started soon. Also, there's a lot going on in Legacy. Tickets are on sale for this Friday at 10 to noon for the Avalanche Band, who will be performing on the 27th. And don't forget that on the 9th, we have Mark Reich here that will be performing from 6 to 8, featuring all kinds of great music, and tickets are for sale in the office. And last but not least, I can't believe we're bringing this up, but we are almost in May. We've already got a lot of things in motion for 2024. And what I would like to do now is to task our committees to comprise a list of items or projects which they need for late 2024. as well as those for 2025. When comprising the list, we would ask the committees to prioritize the items so that the board can have a complete list to review and to take under consideration for the balance of 24 and in preparation for our 2025 budget. We would like to see these lists and this information back to us by July 17th. That will give the committees 3 months to comprise it. It'll give us time as a board to review it, and also for the finance committee to, and our treasurer, to be able to take a look at it and advise us as well. Thank you. Okay, we have no old business, so what we're going to do is move on first to central testing and their proposal for the microsurfacing of phases 1, section 1 and 2, and phase 4, section 2. If Mary Kay, if you would like to, oh wait, sorry, is there someone that
So I thought I should point out too, I don't know
Sure.
if all the board members are aware of this, but when we met with Justin from Central Testing out here, we talked about 2024, which their recommendations were phase 1 and 4 microsurfacing, and I should say phase 4, section 2, which is a little small area. And then there was also phase 5 for 2025, but after talking with Ted Strauss, which is the lead engineer, and Justin, they recommended that we hold off and not move it up a year. We could actually put it towards like 3 years from now instead of moving it up because of the way the roads are maintaining well. So that's why there's only phase 4, section 2, and then phase 1 microservice.
Thank you, Josh, appreciate that. Mary Kay, do you have, or is there anyone signed up before? No? Do you have anything? No. Frank?
No.
No.
Well, I guess I will. The only thing that I know that's not discussed in here, and I know we've had a lot of feedback from residents who live in phase 1. And there had been some issues last time we microsurfaced in the cul-de-sac areas. So my thoughts are, since we're looking at doing this, and not saying it wasn't done right before, possibly looking at including in the cul-de-sac areas, doing the mill and fill just in the cul-de-sac area, and then the microsurfacing in the other. And I'm not sure where the rest of the board feels about this. I don't believe, after talking with Josh, that it would increase our bid from Central Test, or our quote from Central Testing. If it did, it would be a minute amount as far as for their work.
Are we talking about the River Edge stuff?
We're talking about in the cul-de-sacs in phase, in section 1, phase 1 and 2.
Which is River Edge, both
And there's,
cul-de-sacs?
right, whatever many cul-de-sacs there are, correct. So we make sure, because right now it's been a mess. Todd?
I think if that's something they want to recommend, I'm fine with expanding the scope. I'd be a little bit concerned about price, because I know that not necessarily Central Testing's price, but actually the price of the bid.
Right.
And I think if we did that, we should probably change the basis of the proposal here, because this only says microservicing. Do we have any type of idea of what that does to the expense of the project, Josh?
Well, we have to look at what the linear feet of the cul-de-sacs are, and then subtract, basically adjust the price for what their average was in the in the report. So if we took the other areas where it was recommended for mill and fill, took the price from that and just put the difference in what the linear feet were for the cul-de-sacs, then we know what that number is. I didn't ask them to do that. I figured you guys would need me to do that, because when we asked them for the proposal, it was basically microsurfacing. It wasn't. Now, he did mention at the meeting that that's an option.
Yeah.
And really, the engineering work isn't going to change all that much. They just change the specifications of the project, so it won't affect the proposal necessarily, or the cost. But you guys just need to decide if that's something you wanna do, if you want me to get more information and say, hey, we wanna include the cul-de-sacs, what is that looking at price-wise, and then we can try to figure that out from there.
But central testing did not recommend that we do the mill and fill on the cul-de-sacs.
Well, it wasn't that they did not recommend it, well, yes, you're right, in the report, it says microsurfacing for the whole thing, but they also felt that because of the concerns that happened last time, and those are high turn radiuses, they constantly get, ground on because you're turning.
I still have my wet dry.
Yeah, good. It might be a good idea to do the mill and fill because, the road conditions are fine, like the surface is very good. That's why they recommend the microsurfacing. But because the neighborhood's a little bit more particular about their roads, and there's a lot of people that don't appreciate the pebbles and stuff that come off of the
Let's just say
surface.
there's one individual who is.
Well, I'm sure it's more than one. It might just be one person that's willing to say it, but that's the
Well, and he talked about milling and filling the cul-de-sacs
Right, when
when
they-
he was here.
Yes, when he was here, he did state that they were recommending the microsurfacing, however, that based on those areas, the amount of traffic, everything else it gets, that would be another option for the cul-de-sacs, doing those and the mill and fill, and then doing the rest microsurfacing when Justin was here that time. Barb?
Well, since I don't live over there, I'm just concerned that, is that a precedence that, when one person voices that opinion, whether others choose not to and have the same concern or not, if it's one person's issue, does it have to be the whole community's issue? Because we all end up paying for it with our HOA fees. So, when is it scheduled? Do you have any idea when it's scheduled for the whole thing to be redone?
Well, if you guys microsurface, then it'll be 7 years before you touch it.
Then, Chris?
The main issue here, as I see it, is what happened last time is we had two companies. This was the first time they did the microsurfacing. The one company said you gotta stay off of it for 24 hours. The other company said, oh no, after an hour you can drive on it. Well, not only were they driving on it while they were still putting it down, but we also had trash trucks tearing up those areas. So, to me, the main thing, I think the microsurfacing is fine and would work, but we've really got to tell people you need to stay off of it. What we may ask, if they can, is, and they did this and then things worked pretty well, if especially on the cul-de-sacs, they could roll the cul-de-sacs, because that seemed to help the microsurfacing adhere. Otherwise, yeah, they have to stay off of it for more than just an hour. That's somebody who tells us that, they're feeding us a lie.
So one of the other questions, I guess, just throwing this out there, when the bids are put out, if it could be the price for 100% microsurfacing and the cost if we microsurfaced and mill and filled in the cul-de-sacs. And then it would allow us to choose which way we wanted to go. That the board would then have that option based on the pricing. I don't know how you all feel about that. Todd?
To me, we trust Ted and Central Testing to tell us what to do with our roads. So to me, if we go back to them and say, should we mill and fill this? And they say yes, then I am fine with that. If they're still staying with their original microsurfacing, I say that's just what we do, and we just get those bids.
And central testing did not do the microsurfacing the last time, correct? We had a different vendor?
Well, they've been part of your roads this whole time. They don't do the work.
Right.
They just write the specifications and make sure it's done to the specifications.
But the process has changed slightly since we did it last time.
I think they're more aware of the particulars of this community and make sure things are run a little smoother. They've learned over time. But really, you are gonna have pebbles and rocks coming off. It's just that part of that product. That's how it
I
works.
agree.
Right.
And if that's what our road firm says we should do.
Yeah, so I agree with Terry that we get a quote to do the mill and fill, and if it's not outrageous, we consider it, but as Central Testing has already given us a quote to do just the surfacing, and I think we should just stick with that unless the price to mill and fill is so ridiculously low.
Right,
that we
well,
can't pass it up.
Central's bid is actually for the engineering side of things, so we have no idea what the actual cost is gonna be for the roads. So depending on how you all wanna make a motion, either Todd had suggested that, you know, to move forward, and based on the recommendation of Central Testing, if they feel that the mill and fill is a better or smarter way to go for the cul-de-sacs, and then the rest, the microsurfacing, or if they feel we're fine with the microsurfacing, I know you'll.
So they're gonna tell you that
up to
it
us.
makes complete sense to just microsurface it, because that's traditionally what they are gonna do.
Right,
But they're also gonna tell you that you're gonna have the granules coming up over time, because that's part of it. And if you're concerned about that, one way to mitigate it is to mill and fill in the cul-de-sacs, which have the constant turning. That will lower the amount of granules that you get. So it's really your preference, and it's dollars, essentially.
Todd, where would the money for this come from?
Well, in one sense, if you're gonna move section 5, phase 1 out 2 or 3 years, and I wanna guess that was in the $35,000
Right.
range, you'd have some amount there in order to, you know, sort of borrow ahead on the reserves, and I would feel fine with that. I think to some extent, it probably does come down to dollars. If it was $5,000 or $10,000 more, I'd go, woo-hoo, let's go do it. If it's 200 grand, I'm like, no.
I agree.
So if it's not that hard, do we ask for 2 types of bids?
okay, what I would suggest, and there again, going through bid process before in the past, I believe there should be, and we can confirm with Central, that they can spec it out to where the bidders would be able to give us a price for strictly mill and fill. And they would then also be able to give us a second price, which would be for the mill and fill and microsurfacing, and then another one strictly for the microsurfacing. And then with the contingent in there that it'll be based on board decision which way it's awarded. That way, then we have an informed decision. That's just my suggestion.
And some of those vendors are gonna look at that and say, yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, the more complicated you make it, the less people you're gonna have interested in
Yeah.
bidding. I think that what I would do is move forward with this proposal, have them start working on the engineering work, and then we, in the background, can do a little bit of research on
Okay.
how much linear feet the cul-de-sacs would actually be, and then get an idea of what it would increase, and then we could maybe make adjustments to what central testing's doing after we get that information, but that prevents us from waiting a month.
Great idea.
But, so I mean, when we look at mill and fill, and my first thought was we just take the rate per foot of the last job and just apply that. I mean, this is gonna be a lot more expensive.
Yeah.
Right on a per foot. I didn't know it would be that.
He is here in
Yeah.
spirit.
I'm tending to say we just go along with what they originally recommended, and just stay with the microservices.
Chris?
I do neighborhood watch, and I live on a cul-de-sac, or right next to a cul-de-sac, and I have looked at the one cul-de-sac where there was an issue, and it seems like it's the only one that was an issue, and it wasn't that big of an issue. I do understand it bothers some people, but I just don't see where we'd even think about milling and filling. I think the microsurfacing would work.
Okay, is there any more discussion, or do we have a motion, Frank?
Since I haven't spoken on this yet, I think the good news is that all we're deciding today, more or less, is this contract for the engineering, which would not change much, if any, on what we do. The other good news is that, so we can say yes to this if the rest of the board agrees and have forward movement and not stop the process. The other good news is that there's no IMAs involved here, and perhaps it's just as simple as, you know, Josh talking to Justin again and saying, hey, you know the score, you've been here a few times, you know there's some concern about the cul-de-sacs and how they went last time. If we do proceed with 100%, you know, microsurfacing, what will be different this time to mitigate those concerns that we put up with last time? The other thing is, I don't think we can make a decision based on an unknown. We have no idea how much more the mill and fill would be in the cul-de-sac. So even if Justin could give a ballpark figure as to what that would cost more, and since Todd said that the square foot price for that was not too long ago, we could probably get an educated guess on both ways. And so I think the residents deserve us to make a decision based on hard facts of cost instead of just wondering, you know, I mean, because if we don't do that, there's gonna be some people that whatever decision we make, they could say, well, you never even found out how much the other way would cost. And that's not good business practice. So without muddying the works, I think we could just ask Justin, you know, to give us like a ballpark, and then also how will this microsurfacing be better than the last time, and what do we need to do? You know, I think Josh was very wise. The last time we had road work, he stopped the garbage in the whole community, and everything else, that we did things right last time. So that's my 2 cents.
Right, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we accept the proposal from Central Testing.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All
So-
those, I'm sorry, go ahead, Todd.
I'm assuming we take this out of reserves, I think that's where we've spent there when it's a specific section of road. Is that correct, Josh? I didn't.
That's what you've done in the past. I don't necessarily, I think it should come out of, you know, like professional services, but it could go either way. It could be tied into the reserve project because you are spending reserves, but let's say for some reason you don't actually move forward with it, then you just paid a professional.
Yeah, it's sort of unlikely we're not going to do any.
Sure, yeah, either way we're fine.
Okay, I'm going to suggest we take it out of the reserves, because that would be a huge hit to our professional consulting.
All right, there's a motion on the floor, we've had a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, moving right along. Next we have ENC's SCR pond aerators. And do we have anyone to talk prior?
Do you want me to introduce it?
Yes, I would love for you to do
All right.
that.
So, the committee did a great write-up. I'm just gonna summarize it real quick. Basically, they met with our pond service provider and expressed concerns about a couple of our ponds that have fish kills or have pretty large algae blooms that are hard to get under control a couple times a year. So what the service provider has recommended is that by providing aerators in these ponds, which are basically diffusers at the bottom of the pond that bubble up oxygen, and it causes oxygen levels to increase in the water, which in theory would reduce the algae blooms. Now I say in theory because you're still going to have them, you're still going to have algae, it won't go away, but it should help with the oxygen levels and prevent large fish kills or turtle kills or alligator kills, I guess you guys have had here too. So it's supposed to help the ponds and keep them a little bit more consistent, which will make it easier for their twice-a-month treatments. You're not going to be able to get rid of your twice-a-month treatments because you're going to need those for weed control and still algae. But it should be a way to keep the ponds a little bit more consistent. There's two different types, as you guys saw in the proposals, you have solar, you have electrical. The information there is very, it's not specific to any pond. This is just to give you an idea of what these systems might cost, what they, what parts and things are needed, and just give you an idea.
Okay,
Yeah, you've got a list of people here.
okay, who's first?
Let's start with Gary.
All righty.
Gary Igerman, about 579. I'm on the NC and pond subcommittees. I also do the water testing on all our ponds that we test. Lake Road, I've seen their results over the last 4 months, 5 months, how long they've been our new vendor over the previous vendor, and the quality of our ponds is really much dramatically increased, and they're doing a great job. They have furnished us a report twice a month with what they're doing out there, and their next phase or recommendation is to put bubblers or aerators in 3 of our ponds. One being Nostalgia, that we historically every year have a fish kill. Part of that is due to stratification, and these bubblers would move the water around and get rid of some of that toxic sludge that's in there and keep the stratification at a minimum, or at least hopefully a minimum, so we don't have fish and tadpole kills. And I would like to ask the board to direct the CAN to get us some firm proposals on where they would be, these units would be located, whether solar or electrical is feasible in some locations. Let's find out if we have electrical availability, because I'm told that solar is a higher maintenance cost. And that's it.
Thank you. Who do we have next?
Jenny.
Jenny Olson, lot 625. Thank you, Josh, for the good introduction. Aerators do even more than bringing oxygen from the bottom. It's amazing that they also help decrease the bottom sediment and may help us not need to dredge our ponds quite as soon. They have a lot of good qualities. So I'm really happy that we can bring this proposal to the board to consider aeration for our ponds. And the 3, as we said, were Nostalgia. Nostalgia didn't have a fish kill that I'm aware of this year, but it always has slightly higher, or almost always slightly, nitrogen and phosphorus levels. And we know that has something to do with the fertilizer that's coming off from the lawns. We're quite sure of it. So that means that's an education issue. That means E&C needs to do more in the line of education to let people know how they do not, let them know that they don't need to fertilize as much. They need to be careful what's going into the ponds. Pine straw has such a strange bank, so it's almost impossible not to have a problem there. Each year we have something called Azolla Vilsulites, which is a species of water fern, and every year we seem to get complaints about the brown scum, they call it, that's on the pond. We need to do something to improve the aeration in that pond. The 2 quotes we have are for like electrical, and one is for electrical and one is for solar powered. I questioned why it said 15-year solar panels on the bottom, so I had to do a lot of research to see, but it is electrical. I've asked a lot of questions, called and done some research about solar, and I've been told that the panels do not need to come off before a storm. Even before Irma, the panels were not damaged. So I've been trying to figure out how expensive it really is to have solar. It's more expensive in the beginning, but then we don't know where we need to get our electricity from Nostalgia might be an easy place to have an electrical box, but Josh will fight that out. But we need to know just how expensive it will be and what it will cost in the long run. I was told that typically electrical draws 4 to 7 amps for a typical system, which is not really very much. Both of them will have a box. You'll both have an onshore compressor that pumps air through the bottom weighted tubing to the diffusers in the water body. And after doing your research, I'm thinking, and after talking to people who know something about aerators, that it might be a better suggestion for Long Pond than having bubblers that are more surface as well. So the best expert will be Lake Pros, I'm sure. It will be nice to get these bids and look at it, but I totally encourage the board to look positively at protecting our wetlands that we have and our waterways, and have us get bids and get at least a couple aerators this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Next.
Jan Greer.
Was that a trick or what?
No, we just wanted you closer, Jan. We can grab you now.
Jan Greer, lot number 55. I'm relatively new to the community, and I know Gary and John and Jenny have worked long and hard on this, but I have, in my previous life, worked in 2 different communities, getting bids, writing RFPs for an aeration system, and then in the second community, actually working with the pond committee to get that same kind of system put in. Second community was much, much smaller. But I can tell you 2 things are extremely important when you're thinking about an aeration system. One is how much water you've got stored in that pond, or can store in the pond. And second, how deep it is. Those 2 things are critically important. If the pond isn't 10 feet or deeper, then you're really, the bubbles that are coming from the aerator on the bottom don't have a lot of time to actually mix that, the striations of the water. That needs to happen. Secondly, there has to be quite a distance between those aerators. That is one of the issues that have to do with solar. Although in the second community I was in, they did install 2 solar operated systems. And contrary to what the vendor told Jenny, they did have to remove those panels. Maybe that was just as a precaution, I don't know, but they did, I can tell you, in Hurricane Ian, and I'm really glad. So there's a lot of considerations that you have to consider when you're doing this. One thing that can give you a lot of information is something called a bathymetric survey. That measures the depth of your pond, the contour of the bottom of the pond, and the amount of water you're storing in that pond. It sounds like a terrible hard thing to do, but it really isn't. It's done with a boat, and you go out and they have this little sonar thing and they measure those and come up with the storage area that you have and the depth. Because the size of the cabinet and the compressor are dependent on how much water you have to move and how far you have to push that air to get to the aerator that's on the bottom. So if you don't know those 2 things, you might be taking a real good guess, but then you might not either. I don't know. But it's not a simple thing. And as Gary and Jenny have found out, they've been working on this a long time. The more information you have, the better off you are that the money you're spending is going to go where it needs to go.
Thank you.
John.
John Bradford, lot 575. We've been working on this for quite a while, and I did have an opportunity to talk with the manager of the retention ponds in Leesburg, and I noticed a difference in what's taken place over the last couple of years. He's only been here 2 years, but in that period of time, he's cleaned those ponds beautifully by using a combination of aerators, fountains, and depending on where, and the size of the pond in order for him to accomplish it. So I'm just saying, Leesburg has done a nice job, and hopefully you'll go forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
That's it? Okay. I think what we'll do is, Barb, would you like to start discussion?
I want to thank Josh for sending the information and the video. I found the video that you sent really interesting. It did talk about the depth of the ponds, which I have no idea how deep ours are. That does make a difference in moving the water, which was just said. But I think that we do need to do something, starting small to begin with, maybe one pond with trial and error, to make sure it works. And I like the idea of this study, although I think Lake Pros, I have full confidence in them in terms of what they're recommending. They wouldn't sell us something that wouldn't work in our ponds, in other words. So I take their recommendation highly, but I think we should move forward on this as soon as possible.
Okay, Todd?
So I like the idea of what Jan was saying, and it was one type of survey whose name just completely escaped me, but getting an idea of how much water we have in the ponds. I think that's a good starting point. My concerns, and it's honestly because I just don't know much about this, is they all come with a sound dampening inclusion, which sort of makes me both happy and sad. Happy that it comes with that, but sad that there's noise. So I think to some extent, I would love to know how loud these things are.
I've been told, depending on the system, it's very similar to an air conditioner.
Okay.
If I could interject, 45 to 50 dBs,
Okay.
which is about what your dishwasher at home is.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think, depending on where it goes, depending on the pond and how close it is to a house, that could be louder. So I'm fine with going forward to find out this stuff, but I think those are some of the things that I would like to know. How loud, how big is this enclosure? If it is a solar thing, I'm assuming I don't have 5 miles of panels someplace, but I have some, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's knowing those type of details that would help. And my other concern is I've heard for years, it's the runoff from our yards that caused. And I know when we put the plants along the shore, along the shoreline, part of that was to help that, but I'm not sure that benefit was ever shown in any of the water testing results that we got back. So I guess I am good with going to get more data, but I'm not sure.
Josh, did you have something you wanted to say, or no?
No, I think a lot of those questions we can answer if I'm tasked with getting specifics for a specific pond.
So a question I have, especially when I'm mentioning the depths of the ponds, I think some time ago, the depths had been measured. Do we have any information regarding the depths of our ponds?
It almost doesn't matter, because if it was 5 years ago, they could have changed.
True.
So part of the process would be to identify which pond you would want to do, and then Lake Pros will then go and spec that whole thing out. They'll look at how deep it is, they'll look at the circumference of the pond, they'll look at the distance from electrical, they'll look at opportunities for solar, and then all of those details can be put together in a proposal. What size box, how many batteries, how many panels, what the cost would be for electrical, how far it would have to be, all of that, and then that would give you a lot of that information.
Right, and also either system would require routine maintenance every so often, am I correct?
Yeah, if you want it to last.
Right, so that would also be something that we would need to have an idea of increase in maintenance cost, as well as not just the electric or whatever. Okay, Chris?
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, ma'am.
So the bids of the estimates that we have here are just ballpark,
Yeah, when ENC met with them and I met with them, we just basically asked them to give us an idea of what some of these systems would cost, not specific to any particular pond.
Okay.
Because it will change depending on which pond you go with. You know, Long Pond is a total different than Pine Straw. Not only is the electrical going to be located in different places, but the system you would use, you know, you might need 3 sets of diffusers on one and only 2 on the other, or 5 and 3. You know, they have to look at the actual depth and distance.
Okay, Chris?
About a dozen years ago, when I was on the ESC, we looked at this same issue. And the major thing, just like Todd said, was it's the runoff from our yards that causes most of this algae bloom. People over fertilize, then they overwater, and it ends up in our retention ponds. And you can look almost any websites, but a couple of major websites, University of Maryland Extension Services and United States Department of Agriculture will tell you that the aeration will not take care of the algae blooms. It will help. There's also an ultrasonic remediation that we might want to also consider along with the aeration, which would, between those 2 things, plus the education system, which we really need to get on and educate our residents that you don't need to fertilize as much, you don't need to water as much. That's why we're having these algae blooms. The aeration will help. It won't get rid of the total problem. I think we should probably at least take a pilot project with one of the ponds and say, okay, let's maybe take the worst one, like Pine Straw, which is the smallest one. It always seems to have a lot of algae on it. It looks always terrible, and see what will happen with that just one pond, to see what happens this year. But that's my thoughts.
Frank?
So I have a bunch of questions on this, and some of what I say might not go over too well, but I also want to speak for the residents that are not perhaps as vocal, but that we always hear from about HOA fees. You know, we enjoyed years of no HOA fees. That train has left the station. We're totally built out now, and when we add a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here, it does not come without cost, and then we're going to have to probably entertain raising HOA fees in the future on a regular basis, just because everything is going up and we have no more empty lots or anything. So we need to keep our spending within the guardrails. And I think, you know, Todd said something similar. I would want to know if there's a way to measure the improvement if we do this.
That's a great question, because that was one thing I was going to ask you is, okay, we do a pilot project, what's the definition of success?
Because Josh, you've already told me that it's not going to lower the Lake Pros bill, because they're still going to come out here every 2 weeks and they're still going to do the same stuff they do.
Yeah.
You know, part of me kind of...
But if I could, it will help.
Yes, it will help. I almost think it's like, you know, a person who smokes doesn't want to give up smoking, so now they want to look at buying oxygen tanks. And, you know, maybe the smarter thing to do is to quit smoking. So maybe the smarter thing to do is let's have an educational program. Are there lawn companies out there that do eco-friendly lawn care? Because I'd switch, you know. I have Massey now, they come once a month, and I don't know what the heck they do. It's green, that's all I care about. So, but I would switch to a better company to help Legacy, and maybe other people will too. And maybe down the road, once you get that education, you could actually have the board, you know, through lawyers and everything, demand that all residents do it in an eco-friendly way. And that solves the problem, and we're not spending anything. You said about how noisy, yeah, that was a concern too. You know, Chris said that they sound about the same as a dishwasher. I know my wife doesn't make any noise when she washes the dishes, but so I'm just concerned about, I'm amazed at how much money it costs Legacy to keep this a nature-friendly, like, untouched community. It's amazing what we spend. And right now, My main focus is on the building project and the roads, and everything else is almost a distraction. And I know somebody's gonna take that out of context and beat me up with it, but, you know, I think there's more questions that we should find out. It's gonna cost a ton of money if we run electrical to these ponds. You know, we have roughly 20 ponds or so. I've heard 22, this map says 19. Well, we got a lot of ponds. If we do 1 or 2 or 3 ponds, you know, the same day we got this, we got complaints over on Church Pond and how it looked. And what's gonna happen when everybody says, well, I want my pond to have bubbles. I want my pond to have bubbles. And, you know, there's not even any assurance that every pond that we have here is going to remain a pond 20 years from now. I mean, retention ponds are just that. They're not permanent, and we can't guarantee water in them all the time. I have heard that, I think it's, what's the pond over there? No, the one that has the liner, Nature View. That has a liner, and I guess there's some issues with that down the road, we may conceivably have to spend a few $100,000 on that to fix it. So, I am concerned, so I want to be the minority voice of conservative reason. That's all. Thank you.
Mary Kay?
So, I do believe it was either last year or the year before, ENC went around and redistributed the perimeter plants. And we did get some good success with adding plants to ponds where they didn't have any. My question is, would it be prudent for us to look at adding additional plantings to the ponds before we go ahead and spend money on a bubbler to see if it will do any good? That's my first question. And you have an answer, go ahead.
No.
I do.
Uh-huh.
If you could, yeah, two of the ponds, they're most Nostalgia and Pine Straw, they do have a lot of plants. They're just, because of the ponds themselves, they just have issues with the algae bloom, which a lot of it has to do with the runoff from the fertilizer. So,
Okay.
yeah, the plants have helped.
They have helped.
Yes.
Okay. So my other question was, this estimate for 4850, is that for one bubbler for each pond?
No. That's, if you read it, it's basically a sample of what a solar system might be, or electrical system without electrical. That's what both of those are.
Okay, so how many bubblers do we need in each pond?
Which pond do you, they're all different. That's what I'm trying to explain.
That's what he was kind of getting at. We would have to find out that, you know, if we wanted to, for instance, it was suggested maybe look at Pine Straw, it's the smallest, they'd have to measure the pond to tell us what we specifically needed, and then possibly get a quote to do that, whether it be with solar
So
or
what does
electric.
this 4850
So
include?
the dollar amounts are samples.
But what does it include?
Well, it's listed on there. And there's a few diffusers, a box with the generator in it, or what pumps the air through the lines, and the
That's
diffusers.
one.
Yes,
Okay,
minus the electricity.
okay,
So it's probably gonna cost a little more to get the electricity there. Each pond is gonna be different. The system that is required will be different. So the cost can't be exact unless we know which pond you wanna choose.
and we are dead set against solar? I mean, this is.
Nobody's dead set against
No.
anything. What, the whole point of this was, they submitted the SER. You as a board are deciding, do you want to go down this path? Do you want to start putting aerators in ponds? Do you want me to investigate this further? So you're choosing to allocate my time towards this.
So, this is a sunshine state. We have sun 90% of the year. I would like to see some kind of statistical information on solar panels or solar bubblers. And I agree with Frank. I mean, when do we stop? Do we do 3 ponds this year, and then 3 ponds next year, and then 3 ponds the year after that? I don't know. I just don't know what to say here. Where does this money come from, Todd? What account? Does it come out of ponds? Does that put them over budget?
So I would probably bring it out of capital improvements, depending on what the cost was. I mean, it doesn't cost us a thing to ask Josh to spend a little time, and I think a lot of us have a lot of things we want to know a little bit more before I either jump, yay, I would really like to see these, or no, I don't. So I'm not quite sure I understand what the benefit is. I'm not quite sure I can measure that against a cost I don't know. And that cost would include not just money, but, you know, how many solar panels I need out there, how much dishwasher noise is going up to the homes. I mean, I think there are all those things that I think it's a good idea to ask Josh to look into it. But knowing that it's Josh to look into it, it's not the board saying this is a direction it wants to go yet. It's the board saying this is a direction we would like to learn about. And I guess I would sort of phrase it like that.
So Josh, based, and you all can correct me if I'm wrong, the consensus, I believe, is that we're not saying 100% no, but if perhaps you could talk further with Lake Pros to find out, I guess the question would be, do we want them, so we'll have a general ballpark, possibly to look at the smallest pond to see what something that small would cost, because then we know whatever else is going to be larger. And I would imagine it's going to be that they would have to measure the depth to get the information back to us and to let us know what is going to, their recommendation is the best for solar or possible electric.
Okay, so I'll get proposals for both and then you can decide.
Okay.
So the only thing you want me to do is pine straw, and you want proposals for both
Yeah,
electric?
I think that's a wise thing, is that we test it first to make sure it works. I want to spend the money and then it doesn't. This is kind of like invasives, it's never gonna go away.
Well, I think you have to be careful using the word test, because there's no way of measuring success.
I-
You're committed to investing more into your ponds and hopefully having a more consistent outcome, whether it's this and more, that's what you're doing. You're not gonna be able to say, all of a sudden this pond's a, pristine, perfect pond. It's not gonna happen.
Well, it's never gonna happen.
So as I'm saying, you're making an investment in the ponds, but the word test, I think you guys should be careful using that.
Well, is there a way through some of the water quality testing that if we did do a pond, I know that they measure all sorts of things, we could at least see if the results.
Sure, you can start testing that. It's gonna be off the cost, pay the cost for the test. Right now, we
Well-
do 3 of our ponds and it's free, but if we wanna add one, we can.
Well, is one of the 3 ponds the pond we're?
No.
Fine, so no.
Okay, do we know that pine straw is the right pond to start with? Because what I did here is, I have no idea how deep these ponds are. Is that actually our lowest volume pond?
I could say, yeah.
Okay, all right.
So my other question is, are there any grants from the state or the county?
We talked to Lake Pros about that. They weren't aware of any, but I know some, I've researched it a little bit, ENC's researched it a little bit, but there's nothing significant for putting these in. There might be, like there's Love Your Lakes grants and different shoreline type of grants, but similar to what we got last year, but nothing significant.
Okay.
Based on what Jan said, and it appears that on this topic, she's probably the smartest person in the room on it, based on her past experience. A real shallow pond might not be the best option to do a pilot program on, and we would have to probably get that answered. I think some more talk has to happen with the company, Lake Pros, and what would be the best pilot program, and I think I would like to call it that. If we do pursue this, and I think the only thing I'm open to right now is perhaps getting more information and perhaps a proposal for a pilot program for one pond, and that all the residents understand that if we go that far, it is a pilot program. It might not be there forever, and it might not be with the intent of doing it on all the other ponds we have. So that needs to be universally known. So I think that's about as much as I would like to probably see at this point, getting some hard numbers and what the best pond is.
Yeah.
And everything.
I think you guys agreed on that. Now you just gotta tell me what to do. So pine straw is the one.
it's up to Lake Pros. If pine straw is the most shallow, and if what Jan said is right, that it wouldn't work well on pine straw.
No,
See
it's,
what they
it's
say.
not, it's not the most shallow,
No.
it's just the smallest circumference.
It's the smallest.
In fact, I would bet it might be deeper in some areas because of how steep that bank is.
The only thing I was told once by someone knowledgeable is that if you see a pond and it has lily pads on it, it's less than 6 feet. But the parts where there's no lily pads is almost guaranteed to be more than 6 feet.
Okay,
Okay,
so which one?
pine straw. And then, and with that in mind, I would say we also, to make an informed decision, if they're gonna give us the information on both solar and electric, is we would also need to get a quote to run electric to pine straw, because that also might influence
Yeah, I'll
the
get that, I'll
overall
talk to
decision.
the electrician
Yeah.
and get that information too. And I'll get you a quote for yearly maintenance on it as well.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, are we, right now then, we will, table this and get further information? No?
You gave me a task, we can
Okay.
table it. It
Alright.
was something accomplished.
All righty. Moving on, Yellowstone landscape bed proposals.
All right, so we have 3 landscape beds. One of them is in really good shape down here. This is the north gate entrance, so you go up Clock Tower, meandering Boulevard. This is the social hall parking lot over here. So the bed that's over here is in decent shape. If the only thing that on these proposals, there's 3. There's one for this bed here and this bed here, and then a separate one over here, because this bed doesn't have any irrigation. So on these 2 beds, right now you have a row of viburnum, you have, I think it's arbicola, and then you have like society garlic in the front, and don't shoot me if I'm wrong on those. This area here, you do have the viburnum, which is gonna stay. We would fill this in with the arbicola, and then there's one other plant on the proposal, which I think is the mamicrotins. So we're gonna make all 3 of these the same. And in order to do that, we have to take water from this island across and then irrigate this bed. We'd rip out the palmettos and all the like desert type plants that are in there, and then make them look uniform with the other 2. So that's what the 2 proposals are that you see there. So there will be a small, we'll call it an incision across the road here. And I say that because it's only like an inch or 2 just to run the pipe across the road. And ideally we would do that before they do the micro surfacing, and then it would come out as a smooth finish once that's done. So we have 3 people that would like to speak before. One would be Jenny Olson.
Hey, Jenny?
Jenny Olson, lot 625. I studied the diagrams that you had out a few times, and there were 2 proposals, and I'm looking at 3 areas and 3 arrows, and then I noticed that you were looking at the irrigation in the median as well, and I was trying to figure out what you were trying to do with it all. Today, I'm hearing that you want them all to look the same. The corner up on the upper left was originally the butterfly garden in 2004 or 5, put in by the garden club when the community first started. That was revamped in 2017 by the garden club monies. We put over $1,000 into the revamping when Yellowstone redid it. It is greatly in need of rejuvenating. The garden to the right has no water. The sable trees are doing great. You didn't plan to take those out, I'm thinking.
We're gonna gut the whole thing.
Oh, this is a nature community. Sable trees are a native tree. They're doing well. When I saw you're putting 3 kinds of plants, if you wanted matchy-matchy, it's fine. There isn't a native plant in there. I guess I see no reason in the world we take out palm trees. They will not like a lot of excess water. And this isn't even what I planned to say, but now that I'm hearing what's planned there, I'm not really liking it. It is a nature community. We have that as our title. We need to preserve the nature. And this is adding where we use more water, put in plants that aren't native. And I guess I'm sorry to not be thinking this is a good thing. I would even say that maybe the garden club could enhance the lot off to the left on top. We just did Fantasy Park. We raised just over $6,000. We've been working hard on that, and I don't want a project that big for next year, let me tell you. I'm the fundraising chair. But maybe we could put some money into that next year, but I don't see what's wrong with having sable palms and no water needed in the garden to the right. I'm sorry, but I'm not thinking it's a good plan. So I'd like to offer help from Legacy Nature Garden Club next year, but in the meantime, yes, it does certainly need to be cleaned up. So I guess I don't have any more to add except I'm not really in favor of what's happening. Thank you.
Pat, hopefully you're not gonna say the same thing.
One of the things that people know.
Stop. Tell us who you are.
Oh,
For the people.
Josh already said it.
But for the people.
Pat Summers, lot 47. And I'm on the ENC. Yes, I do have a hard time with removing, I believe there are 5 sable palms. Those are our state tree. They have survived very well without water. Just shows you what our native plants can do. Yes, if you want to take out the bougainvillea, that can go. And Yellowstone has done a good job on the Mexican petunia that had been growing there. But to have an entrance that all looks cookie cutter, that they all look the same, and then you drive over here and it's the same plants over here. And what I started to say was one of the things is you don't want a monoculture. You don't just want, like, when people plant one type of pine tree in great big lots, you end up in trouble because a borer will come in or a fungus will come in and it'll attack everything. As far as the crotons, I don't feel that the ones out here are doing real well since they were planted a few months ago. I know I've got them in my house. When they get cold in the wintertime, they drop their leaves and they don't always grow back. They are not for the extremes that we get here in Central Florida. We are not the tropical. We're not really even subtropical. We're on that borderline. You go 40, 50 miles north and you can grow redbuds and dogwoods. So we are basically the dividing line. I would like to see the corner with the sable palms become more of a native nature display, so that when people do enter the community, they can say, oh, wow, that really looks good. Maybe I could do that in the corner of my yard. So I'd like you to consider either adding something that's native or just working around those sable palms.
Pat, what do
Can
you?
you show the picture of the bed that they're concerned about? It's
The upper right.
It was up there.
No,
Next one.
next one. Yeah, that one. Now, when you look at those palms, they look good. Yeah, they're healthy. And they haven't had any special treatment. they've grown on their own.
Pat, what kind of native plants were you thinking, or?
I did think about it, to be honest. You could do some of the smaller Walters viburnum. There's quite a few of the ornamental flower type plants that only grow 3 feet high, so that different times of the year you'd have some color. You could put a fire bush in there. I mean, there are different things. Because I only looked at this the other day, I didn't really focus on what I would do. But if you took out the bougainvillea, you cleaned up the lower palms, and there are some dead fronds and things like that, it would turn out looking nice. I would probably put in some kunti to give it a different color of green. It's a darker green. So, and some grasses, different grasses.
There's no water. All right, so next would be John.
John?
Okay, you're up.
Okay.
Jenny?
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Jenny and Pat, you're actually scaring me now. This is the first time I've heard that you didn't want us to spend money. This is refreshingly scary.
She didn't
I'm
say
taken
that.
back.
She didn't say that. She said she wants you to spend it her way.
No. Frank, Fantasy Park didn't cost Legacy anything.
I understand that. I know. This year, yes, I know.
Okay, maybe we can start the discussion, Mary Kay? Do you have anything to?
I mean, we asked Yellowstone to give us an estimate. They've been our vendor for what, 3 years now? They know that we're a nature community. I kind of like the idea of having everything similar when you come in. The front entranceways are exactly the same as the back entranceways. All of the circles here are identical. I think it adds a little continuity instead of having hodgepodge stuff all over the place. I really don't have a problem with what Yellowstone is proposing, and I think it'll be a good upgrade. As far as the palms are concerned, can they be taken out and reused someplace else?
Probably not.
Okay, then that answers my question.
I mean, you can leave them and they just won't be uniform necessarily, which may or may not be a bad thing. It was just, you know, I've gotten complaints about that corner, and
It
this
looks
is my
horrible.
resolution to solve it.
And what happened to the birds that were in the,
I'm not a bird guy.
no, there were metal statues in the.
Oh, they probably, I don't know, they got knocked over. Mowers did it, that's probably what everybody will say, I have no idea. Those have been broken since I've gotten here.
Yeah, they used to
Yeah,
be
there
here.
used to be, yeah.
Yeah, Frank?
Just a second, Jenny, do you know what happened to the birds who were in there?
His neck got broken. Sorry.
Oh, that got broken.
I think he's in one of the bushes. He was in one of the bushes, broken neck and all.
Frank?
On this point, I think I agree with Jenny and Pat that I'd like a little bit more color there, and if it a little bit more cleaned up, and maybe some of that I think it's called woolly grass or something like that, and you know, a little bit more color. I know it seems lately everybody's about diversity and equity and things like that. I don't mind. I don't care if they don't look all the same. I think a little bit diversity is fine there, and you know, we're talking $15,000 to do something that, you know, when in doubt, do without. Maybe we take a more conservative approach and clean that up and just add some of more color with native plants. And I guess that's just my opinion. It's up to the majority, of course.
Okay, Frank, are you saying then, I understand leave that one lot like that, clean it up, add some stuff to that, but are you saying then not to change or add anything to the other beds?
Well, on that one, it doesn't seem like we need the irrigation then, so that saves a lot of money.
Right.
I just think sprucing up and adding some color would be maybe the more conservative, more prudent way to go here. You know, our Yellowstone bill is creeping up every year. It's gonna be soon that we're gonna be paying them over $1 million a year, so.
Thank you. Chris?
Well, after listening to Pat and Jenny, maybe we could keep this one. And just like Frank said, just add some native plants that maybe we don't need to irrigate. And then the other two we could take care of and add the different plantings so that they are the same, but they're different from across the street. So I kind of like that idea too. We got a couple different ways that both look nice. Ones we don't have to worry about cutting underneath the road. We can just use natural plants. We may have to water them a little bit this year, the first year, till they get settled in, but maybe that's something that would work for both sides.
Yeah, after listening to what they had to say, I concur as well. I think maybe if we could get that one section cleaned up, get the palms lifted, add some other stuff to add maybe a little color there, but where we wouldn't have to add the irrigation at this time, and then changing up or out the other areas to add more color and refresh it, I'd be fine with that. Todd?
I'm fine with redoing the two irrigated gardens, but I think we leave the third one non-irrigated and we plant Florida-friendly stuff there. I think it's a nice way to show what would grow here, and I'd rather not have the expense of trying to irrigate it, but I think updating the other two is fine. I think that's a good idea.
Barb?
I agree, and I'm a match type of person. I like things to be the same and match. So I think the two corners could be do them exactly the same as you've shown us here on the pictures and the estimates and drawings. But the third one, just spruce up and plant a couple of colorful things in their darker greens and maybe some things that are flowering to help that corner, because it does look pretty sad.
So I guess, Josh, so if we didn't bring irrigation over to the third bed, how much does that save you? How much does that save us?
Well, you can't, there's two different proposals. I had them do it separate.
Okay.
So one of them you just throw out. And then if you want to do the other two beds, you could approve that one.
So the one for the other two beds, then you're saying is the $4,591. Right. And then we would just have them do a proposal then on the other one for cleaning up that bed and
Well, I can
adding.
get them to clean around the palms. They do that every year.
Right.
And then they'll pull out there's a few strands of Mexican petunia, and then they'll pull that out. If you want to pull the bougainvillea out, they'll pull that out. I'm not thrilled about, doing grasses and stuff there. I've already got John running around to 3 different ponds 3 times a week, watering grasses that we planted because they're having a hard time getting established. So, I mean, this is another one.
Right,
So
well,
you got a maintenance guy
possibly,
that's a watering guy.
possibly Yellowstone can give us an idea of something else that is native that we can put in there, wouldn't require.
It's gonna require it for the first year or two,
Yeah.
especially if we don't get rain.
Well,
We're
then
gonna have to hand water
let's
it.
put that in the request if they water.
Yeah, I'll see if they'll do it.
Yeah, so we don't overload our maintenance guy.
So I'm gonna ask the question again, Todd, where's this money coming from?
So this would come out of,
You could do grounds maintenance on this
Yeah.
one.
you take it out of general grounds maintenance, which has had almost nothing out of it all year. So I feel fine with certainly taking the $5,000 out. That's,
If there's no discussion, do we have a motion to instruct? them to move forward with the proposal for 459139.
What's
Is there a
45?
motion?
What's
I'll make the
45?
motion.
The 4,591.
approve the-
I thought you meant 45,000.
No, 4,000.
I make a
You
motion
just
to
make a
approve
motion.
the Yellowstone
Yeah.
invoice for 4591.39.
And I'll second it.
Okay,
Any discussion?
Well, yeah, it shows 50 crotons, and I just heard Pat say that they're cold sensitive. I know that to be true, because I've seen dead crotons when it comes to a frost and everything. So, I don't know if crotons are the way to go. I know they're pretty, and, they're colorful,
And inexpensive.
well, and,
Well, these are 3 gallons. The ones that we had earlier were the 1 gallon, so they're gonna be a bigger plant, which will help them get established faster. But it sounds like you guys aren't sure what you wanna do. Maybe you create a committee to look at your landscape beds. Because I thought I was taking a decent stab at it, but apparently I'm way off the mark.
Let's see.
Not far, no, we're not far.
Right, well, there's a motion on the floor, there was a second of the motion. Any other discussion?
Yeah, I personally like the crotons. I got them around my house, and they seem to do just fantastic. And I know, Pat, it's not next to a house, you said that before, but actually these crotons are doing pretty good, considering it's just now coming into the wet season. So I'm pretty happy with what I've seen, so.
All right, we have a motion, a second, take a vote, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. Okay, moving right along, we
So-
have, go ahead, I'm sorry, Todd.
what are we doing about the third bed? Are we instructing Josh to get
Yes.
a different?
Right,
Okay.
yeah, Josh will have them clean up that bed, remove the bougainvillea and the,
Do you wanna have a plan for that, or you want me to start tearing stuff out of there? Because I'll remove the bougainvillea and have them clean up the ponds, but you're gonna have a big bare area right in the middle of that, that's gonna look even worse, especially now because that thing's flowering and it actually looks good.
have them come up with a plan.
Garden Club can do something.
Okay,
The Garden Club did volunteer to help with that area.
right, they, Jenny and them said that they would take a look at that as possibly their project to help with that as well. Next is approval. We have 2 resident volunteer forms. This is for ENC as alternates. We have Ron Pearson and Kent Wilson. Do I have a motion to accept?
I move we accept Ron and Kent as alternates to ENC.
I second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. That being said, that was last of our business for today. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Why do you even ask? No one respond.